Hello everyone, this is John from RPGs and More, and doing a second video today to talk about the upcoming the work I'm doing on some upcoming solo stuff. Um, I've tried a plethora of different systems on this channel. You know, I did Eldritch for a little bit, and that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that one, but you know, and then I also still working with the author on you know some fun stuff. So that's kind of fun. But I've also worked on doing some solo gaming for the Cypher system. You know, one session of that and a couple character creations, and that was neat, and I enjoyed that, and I'd look forward to revisiting it at some point in the future. And the same with the Prince Valiant storytelling game. But the one thing I noticed while doing those is because I did everything live, because I did everything in front of the camera, and I didn't allow myself to do any prep work ahead of time. There are times when it felt very awkward, and I wasn't really happy with how a lot of it turned out. In that sense, I don't like presenting a bad show necessarily, and sometimes I felt like that's what I was doing. But also I realized I wasn't as comfortable with those systems as I thought I was. You know, in my head, I'm just like, oh, I know everything I need to know. And then you actually get down to playing and you realize, oh, shoot, I don't remember how that works. I don't remember that rule. But you're live, so you can't stop and look it up. So you try to make something up and you move on. Um, the system that I was really comfortable with for that was Swords and Wizardry Continual Light that I started out with in a lot of my earlier videos when the camera was way too close. Um, and I've considered going back to that, but at the same time, excuse me, I do want to kind of explore the other systems in my library a little bit more and offer people a little more something for those. And one of the flaws, not flaw, it's not a flaw, sorry, one of the challenges with Swords and Wizardry Continual Light is that because it is very much based on traditional Swords and Wizardry or D&D, um, the rules aren't player facing, and so I kind of had to roll against myself a lot as the DM, and that kind of made it added steps, I should say. And one of the things that I like about the Cypher system is that you roll to defend as much, when someone attacks you, you're defending as opposed to rolling for their attack against you. Um, so I'm revisiting a system that does that, that is very similar in many respects to Swords and Wizardry or Continual Light, and that. So for this solo thing, I'm going to use Knave. This is a special printed copy of Knave that I got in an eBay auction a while ago. I've actually talked about this before. Um, it has options to make everything player facing. You can buy the PDF for a pretty low price on DriveThruRPG if you want to look at it. I'm going to use these rules because they're simple, they're straightforward. There's not a lot to look up, and then I can use DM Fiat for anything that I don't remember, and I don't have to feel self-conscious about it because and I think that's going to be great. I'm going to try that. If it doesn't work out, if I end up feeling just as awkward with this as I did with, Prince Valiant or with Cypher System while I'm on camera, then I'll probably stop and just go back to Continual Light because that's where my comfort zone is. And that's one of the chief hallmarks of solo play, especially if you're going to do it live in front of people, is you need to be comfortable with what you're doing. The other thing that I'm using, I mentioned this in the previous video, but I've got my system, but I also need something to generate quests, and I'm going to be using the quest generation tables in Tavern Trawling from Backswords and Bucklers because I think those quests generated there lend themselves well to the system Knave and its presumption that you're a knave and you're not a hero, you're not a paladin, you're not a heroic knight, you're not a wise wizard, you're a knave who's a little bit of rogue, a little bit of fighter, and can probably maybe cast some spells if they manage to get their hands on the books for it, but they're not actually a spellcaster by nature, you know. And I kind of like that, and I think that the Backswords and Bucklers really lends itself well to that style of play. The other thing I'll be using is A Lonely Knave. This is a PDF you can get off of DriveThru, and it's 2 pages long, and it's a bunch of solo rules written by Peter Burgess, Peter Radin Burgess. I probably pronounced that wrong. I do apologize. And this person is part of Parts Per Million, and they do a bunch of solo rules for various systems. I think Parts Per Million also has one for Tiny Dungeons, the Tiny D6 system, which I may explore at some point because I kind of like Tiny Dungeons. I think it's a cool idea. But I like this one because it has it has the reaction table from Knave, but it also has a lot of rules on how to ask open questions, how to ask closed questions, as well as, you know, just advice, general advice on how to incorporate things. It doesn't talk about how to structure your plots and how to reintroduce NPCs and all that. It's assuming that you're already going to be doing things like that with a system that you've created for yourself. All this one does is provide you the means to get your questions answered, and frankly, that's all I really want. It talks about clocks also for when you do have a quest. You want to incorporate, you know, the quest clock, which is or you could also call it the quest pie chart. You create a pie chart, and however many slices are in this pie chart, that's the different stages you expect to be involved with completing this quest. And so you can record that ahead of time and then keep track of the various quests that your character's on and see how much of that each of those pies they have eaten. I think it's kind of cool. The other thing that I'm going to bring, I have never done this before. I've actually been against it in the past for narrative points of view, but I'm going to try it because I've never really tried it, and maybe I'm just been a stick in the mud. So I found this time tracking sheet online. I think it was like Warlock Designs or something. There's a website. I did a Google image search and I found this image. And it allows me to track the turns, each turn taking 10 minutes, and then the rounds, as well as it has a spot on the bottom for, you know, what monsters are encountered during this time and stuff like that. So it'll probably help in keeping track of those things, so I know, you know, how long things have been, because I kind of want to keep track of the calendar and the days and the hours. Just because one of my goals with solo gaming is to create a story through playing the game solo that I can then turn into a book as an author that I can then sell online, as, you know, read the adventure that I've already done. And that's what I'm thinking of doing with the Swords and Wizardry Continual Light adventure that I did earlier. If I ever revisit that, I'm going to expand on it a little bit more and try to turn it into a book I can sell on the Kindle or something like that. So the next thing that I'm going to be using, one of the pieces of advice that everyone gives you is make a journal. I think that's great advice. You've probably seen my big book. That big book works if you are doing either, you know, you're going to be in there for the long haul, or if you want to do a bunch of different stuff, but you want to keep it all in one space. So those journals work really well. But I'm not convinced that this is going to be a long haul thing yet. This is an experiment. So what I'm doing is I'm using this little book, and I've already titled it Knave Solo. These, you can buy these at the Dollar Tree. Excuse me. So they cost $1. They're little pads. Basically, it's like a notepad, but in book format. And there's lines, but they're pretty widely spaced. It's hardback, which is one of the reasons why I like it. Excuse me. It's hardback, but kind of got that like alligator skin aesthetic to the cover. I kind of like to imagine it's dragon skin because that'd be fun. But there's enough room on the spine to actually write something on the spine. And when you've got 10 of these on your bookshelf, you just kind of look and like, oh yeah, that's the one I need. And you pull it off. I use these for a lot of different smaller projects that I do. Or if I'm playing a character in someone else's game and we're playing in person, I usually bring one of these to be my journal for that game. But I haven't been playing in person in a long time, so I figured I would just bust one out for my own game. And I put the character sheet that I'm creating is on the first page. And then, a second part of that is their item list. And then I'm starting to answer all the questions. I'm doing a lot of random rolls to show what this character is like based on my random rolls, because I'm creating the character entirely at random. And then I've got, their background and questions I asked of the Oracle and the Lonely Knave in order to find more about this knave that I've made. Now, I'll go in more detail about the character in future. Now, the other things that I'm going to do, and this is something that I've not done previously in my solo gaming, is I'm going to try to do some mapping. I was inspired by I think it's the Solo Dungeon Crawler, I believe is their channel's name. They have some pretty awesome stuff that they do, and I really, really like the OD&D dungeon crawl series that they started. The latest video was posted 2 weeks ago, as of today, I think, and the first one was 4 weeks ago, and so I'm hoping that I'll get a third episode today to watch, because I really like his style. He's got a great calm voice, and people like me talking like this. Maybe I'll do some more of this instead of my really hyper thing. But what I really enjoyed is he was showing us his maps, both the maps of the local area and the maps of the world. And so I've gone through my supply of gaming gear from over the years, and I've dug out some supplies that I've been saying, oh, I'll use this eventually. And you know what eventually is now. First one is I've got this dungeon mapping book, and it's by Trollord Games. I don't know if it's out of print, probably is, but it's full of these, sheets of craft paper, but each one has a nice little key at the bottom. It's actually too small for me to read, but it tells you what the various symbols are. I'm probably going to use the one that's on the back cover of this thing, because I can actually read that. And that'll help me kind of keep track of what dungeons I create, because I want to randomly generate the dungeons, kind of like what I did with the continual light sewer system. I'm going to make my own dungeon generator. Probably base it off of that one, maybe expand it a little bit. But then for the world, many years ago, I bought a bunch of stuff, and I have since, a lot of it has moved on to other collectors since that time, because as much as I enjoy reading old material, I'm not really a collector of old material. I like to read it and then pass it on to someone else so they can enjoy it, because otherwise, if I don't do that, then I will hoard it, because I do have a hoarding tendency, as you may have imagined by the shelves behind me, and I'm trying to avoid that. So I actively make the choice to move things on after I've gotten my enjoyment from them. But one of these things I held on to is this lovely little piece here. And this is from TSR, and it is a hexagon mapping booklet. And this thing is pretty pristine. No one's been using it that I'm aware of. It's older than I am, or at least it was published in 1981, so I think it's older than I am. But I've been holding on to it because I was thinking, well, why would I ever use it? Because it's a historical artifact. I'm looking at myself and saying, is it Really? Is it that important? Not really. It's graph paper. It's nice graph paper and it's got a cool historical significance. But ultimately, it was designed to be used. It was not designed to last forever. It was not designed to be a museum piece. It was designed to be used. And if I use it in playing the game, then I'm using it for the purpose with which it was made. And if you are a believer in things, in like the spiritual energy of things, I think you would also kind of agree that things, um, when we use something for its intended purpose, even if we use it up, it's still better than having it sit on your shelf forever and never being touched. And you can sit there and say, "Oh, it's so important," and this is like an heir. I'm this way with a lot of things, family heirlooms and other stuff. I've got a bunch of old silver that I keep for the family, and I like to polish it every once in a while. And honestly, if I ever host gatherings at my home again, I'm going to be busting out the silver and the platters and things. The platter, I should say, I only have one. But I'm going to put snacks on the silver platter and I'm going to serve them to my guests because things should be used. Things should. We should not feel ourselves constrained by the past. Honor the past. Respect the past. Do not use things needlessly. But don't be afraid to take out that old book and read it. Don't be afraid to use the old mapping book, even though it's, you can probably, I could go down to the local office supply shop and get graph paper or even hexagonal graph paper for science, and it might even be, I might even get bigger hexes than what's on this. But why? Because I'm trying to preserve it? I don't think so. So anyway, that's my long-winded explanation of saying I have a thing, and I don't care if you historical, you collectors are going to get mad at me for using it. I'm going to use it because that's what it's here for, and it's mine. So, sorry, that's probably a bit more aggressive than intended. But I also picked up colored pencils to use with it because I want to animate the maps in the same way that Solo Dungeon Crawler and colored in their own maps and stuff. The other things that I'm using, I have a bunch of old books. Gary Gygax's Name Generator. Excuse me. I have a copy of that I'm going to be busting out, and I've also got copies of Living Fantasy and then the World Builder guidebook. And if this series takes off, I'll be using those as well to kind of to add more fuel to my inspiration and make things more entertaining. And I've got more graph paper if I need it, and a whole binder full of standard paper just in case. But ultimately, those are the tools that I'm going to use. I may not be doing as much on camera. We'll see how it goes. I kind of want to start doing more of the background work off camera so that when I do go on camera, I've got things prepped and I can actually show you a completed thing. I may even go as far as actually playing off camera and then doing an on-camera recap of how that play session went. We'll see. I haven't fully decided yet, but I figured I'd give everyone a heads up of what's going on. Again, sorry I'm not as animated as usual. Still not feeling well. But that's life. I'm going to go rest a little bit and try to clean my kitchen. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Peace be with you. Bye.